Are you willing to be wrong about everything, I say, in order to find the right life for you? Are you willing to be wrong about everything? If you're not willing to be wrong about even what you believe, if you're not willing to be wrong about what you see, if you're not willing to be wrong about what you think, then you're putting a lock on that and going to have a difficult time seeping out the truth of who you really are and seeing your innocence and forgiving.
Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and it's my pleasure to have Rhonda Britten with us. Rhonda is an Emmy Award winner, a repeat Oprah guest, a master coach, and she's changed the lives of many people in over 600 episodes of reality television. She's the author of 4 bestsellers, including her seminal work, Fearless Living, and she's the founder of the Fearless Living Institute. Wow. It's quite an impressive roster of accomplishments. She was named America's favorite life coach. She brings the neuroscience of fear down to earth, giving you a path out of not being good enough using the wheels technology she developed that saved her own life. Rhonda, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Stephan. I'm just so excited to be here. I love nothing more than supporting people and changing lives.
Me too. I love revealing light in the world and making a difference for people.
I'm saying hallelujah. Yes, yes, yes.
So I would love to start with your origin story. How did you become such an amazing superhero? What started this?
Well, every superhero, right? They have their kryptonite, right? Every superhero goes through some sort of hell and back, and I am no different. And thank you for even thinking I'm a superhero. But we all come from something. And I know for me, I could not be who I am until I owned my story. And I think that's a really important point, because for decades I couldn't own my story. I wanted to push it away. I wanted to pretend it didn't happen. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to deny it. I lied about it. I did everything but admit it, because I didn't want anybody to know my story, because if they did, I thought I would be judged, hated, ostracized, because I was when I was younger, when my story actually happened. So I'll tell you about the worst day of my life. And that was when I was 14 years old, and my father and mother were getting divorced, and my father was coming over for Father's Day, And we lived in a little tiny town in Upper Michigan, 365 inches of snow a year, 2 restaurants, the Douglas House and Big Boy, and we were going to go to the fancy Douglas House. And so me and my mom were getting ready. My 2 sisters are in the bathroom. We have 1 bathroom, 850 square foot house. They're putting on their, eyeshadow. My mom's putting on her eyeshadow. She put on a rose colored lipstick. And my dad walks in and he goes, come on, because that's what dads do. Me and my mom start walking towards the door. My sister's still fighting in the bathroom. And as me and my mother and father start walking out the door, it starts sprinkling. And my father says, I got to get my coat from the car. Now, this coat was a tan Naugahyde leisure suit coat. Hello. And my mother was putting on her, fake leather plethora raincoat with her beehive hairdo. As me and my mom are walking out, my dad is opening his trunk. And I notice as he opens his trunk, he is not grabbing his coat. Instead, he is grabbing a gun, and he starts screaming at my mother, you made me do this. You made me do this. And he fires. And I start screaming, Dad, what are you doing? Stop, Dad, what are you doing? And he cocks the gun and he looks at me, and I absolutely believe I'm next. And he blinks and I blink, and he blinks and I blink. And I feel like we're there for, 3 hours, and we're probably there for, 30 seconds, a minute. And my mother at that moment, with that gun in my face, looks up and literally with her last words says, no, don't. And my father, with that loaded gun, turns from me and turns towards my mother and shoots her a second time. And that second bullet lands in her abdomen, goes out her back, lands in the car horn. And the next 20 minutes, all I heard was, and then my father cocks the gun again, gets to his knees, puts the gun to his head, and fires. And in a matter of 2 minutes, I am the sole witness to my father murdering my mother and committing suicide. Now, I don't know how anybody else would respond, but this is how I responded. I really believed it was my fault, because I was the only one physically there. I did nothing heroic like a superhero would. I didn't, grab the gun. I didn't kick his shins. I didn't, jump in front of my mother. I did nothing heroic. And, I ran into my mother's room. I remember getting on my knees and just praying, like, please, God, because I just I had just committed to God I'd be a minister. And I said, God, if you keep my mother alive, I'll be a minister. But if she dies, all bets are off. Sadly and horrifically, my mother did die, as well as my father. And for the next 20 years, I was fighting my demons, right? Fighting that guilt, fighting that shame, and started drinking, became an alcoholic, got 3 DUIs, tried to kill myself 3 times. And it was my 3rd suicide attempt where I realized I'm not dying. I don't know how to kill myself. It's not working. And I got to figure out another way. And I'll just say one last thing is that during those 20 years, I did try. Like, I was reading self-help books. I was reading self-help books by the time I was 12. So I was reading self-help books. I was going to therapy. I was doing inner child work, rebirthing. Every workshop you can imagine I went to. It was a very difficult time because I'd been doing so much work, but I still wasn't getting beyond my fears, getting beyond my shame, getting beyond my guilt, getting beyond the story of my life.
So what happened next? What did you do to turn this nightmare into a blessing? Or did you?
Yeah. I mean, the 3rd suicide attempt, I remember, they put me in a psychiatric ward, my 3rd suicide attempt, because that's what they do when you try to kill yourself 3 times, to evaluate you. And they brought me in, got evaluated, stuck in a little lockdown cell, like literally this big with a little cot in it. I think I was there 3 or 4 days, and they deemed me not crazy. And so they let me go. And I went home to my little studio apartment where I lived by myself. And I remember thinking to myself, there has got to be another way. I think I have to start over. I think I have to start from the beginning. And so I actually asked myself, what do kindergartners do? And I said, well, they get a calendar and gold stars. So I literally went to the store, got a calendar and gold stars. And I started keeping track of any good thing I did. And I did that for 30 days. Anything good. And I'm talking about got angry but didn't break anything. That's the level that I'm talking about. Showed up on time. Like this, just so basic things that were difficult for me were revolutionary to me that if I did it for 30 whole days. I kept track of anything good. And at the end of 30 days, my calendar was filled with stars. And by the way, I still have that calendar. And that calendar was still filled with stars. And I thought, okay, I'm worth saving. And so that brought me to another level of willingness to heal. And so that set up, over the next few years, I quit drinking, forgave my father, who, by the way, was the easiest to forgive. And then I forgave my mother, which was harder to forgive once I took her off the pedestal, because I think that's what happens. Most of us get stuck because we have the person who died on a pedestal, right? I had to take my mother off the pedestal. And then lastly, forgive myself for not being the superhero, forgive myself for not being the person who, stepped in front of my mother or, was able to save my mother, right? So through that forgiveness process, through forgiving my father, which was a miraculous experience of my forgiveness of my father, and quitting drinking were key for me to become who I am today. That started my journey on believing that my life was possible, believing that I had a chance. And then my coaching origin story is a little bit down the road, but that gave me hope, I think. It gave me hope. Like maybe I could get past being an orphan, abandoned, rejected, ostracized. Maybe I could.
So you called it a miracle that you forgave your father. I want to give you a definition of miracle from Kabbalah. A miracle isn't defined as when the impossible becomes possible. In Kabbalah, a miracle is defined as removing the illusionary veils that don't allow us to see the light in every experience and moment.
Yeah, I agree. In some places it would say that there's no such thing as miracles because life is miracle itself, right? Because just like you're saying, you're lifting the veil. I do believe that it was my willingness to be wrong about everything, to be able to see it fresh and new, to be able to see my father's innocence when there was so much evidence against that. And I think when we're willing to do that, to see, I'm a big believer in innocence, seeing our own innocence and seeing others' innocence. Doesn't mean we don't see what they're doing that's offensive, quote unquote, whatever you want to call that. But to see their innocence, really that we're all innocent at the core. And we're all just, well, I say, because my work is fearless living, we're all just afraid. And that fear just mutates us. Like my father killed my mother because he was afraid. My mother died really because she was afraid. And I almost died out of 3 suicide attempts because I was afraid. So yes, I agree with you 100%. It's really lifting the illusion and, touching the hem of the garment and seeing a new world. It's like seeing through a new lens, as I call it, right? We see through a new filter. We see everything different. It's a different color. It's just different. Everything changes in an instant.
Wow. A children's book that I love. Your story inspires me to share. It's called The Little Soul in the Sun.
Oh, yes, I have that book.
Oh, you
do?
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's by Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote Conversations with God. or A
Yes.
Conversation with God. No, it's
One
called
of my favorite books, by
Conversations.
the way.
Yeah. So this children's book has been really powerful for me. Read it not just to my 3-year-old, but my 31-year-old daughter, quite a span in age, you know. Uh, I've read it to friends, family who are older than me, and it changes how you look at everything to know that we're all beings of light
Yes.
and that somebody had to be willing to lower their vibration so much that they could be the villain. They could play the villain in your movie. And that gives you the opportunity to be not just the forgiving one, but to embody forgiveness, to experience that part of the light. Because before this, we were all just little candles in the sun, and we didn't really understand the full glory of
Yes.
who we really are.
Yes, I always imagine that me, my mom, and dad, are up in a cloud, right? We're up there, souls, candles, whatever you'd like to name it. And, we're all just talking, right? Of course, we're not mom and dad and daughter back, then we're just three souls hanging out. And we're talking about, like, what do you want to do next lifetime? And my dad goes, oh, let's do something really amazing. And I go, oh, yeah, let's do it. Right. And he goes, okay, wait a minute. You points to me and says, why don't you help people master fear? Because fear is, it's fear of love, fear, God, fear, forgiveness. It's like, yeah, that would be awesome. And then he goes, but something terrible is going to happen to you. And I'm like, yeah, right. And so he goes, well, you be the mom and I'll be the dad. I'll be the terrible one. I'll lower my vibration this lifetime. I'll be the terrible one. And I'm like, okay. And, I know what we'll do. I'll kill your mother. She'll be the mom and I'll kill her. And then you will go through 20 years of hell. And then you will realize, and I'll be like, and we were all like, yay, right? Right. We're all in, yeah, this is going to be so great. And then we come down to earth. And of course, we forget everything, right? We forget everything. But I do believe that this didn't happen to me. Let's just say that I know that it was fodder for my journey. And I know that it is the inspiration for my passion and purpose. And I know it is the conduit in which I truly became myself.
Wow. And so when you were up in the clouds, talking to your father and mother souls, deciding how this movie is gonna go, and what kind of lessons, challenges, and opportunities and so forth. That sounds like soul contracts. Are you familiar with that concept?
Absolutely. Soul contracts. Absolutely. I had a soul contract and have a soul contract with my father and my mother. I just had an energy healing recently and we were working through some things, entities or energies that were still hanging out with me. And she was like, okay, we have a soul contract with this person. You don't with this person. My uncle recently died, my dad's older brother. I felt compelled. Like, I don't live near him. I mean, I'm very close to him and I love him, but he lives 1,000 miles away in a completely different state. And, he was sick. The minute I got a call that your uncle may be dying, I literally was on a plane in 3 hours because I know that we had a soul contract and I know I had to finish part of his business. So yes, I completely believe in soul contracts. And, can we become who we're meant to be in order to fulfill that contract? Because so many of us, on some get that nudge, get that push, get that little like, hello, little knock on the door, but we're so in this earth, right? We're so laden down with of course, I focus on fear, that they're unable to see their way out or unwilling, not that they're unwilling on a soul level, but unwilling because it is so frightening. Who will I be then? Who will I be if I forgive my father? Who will I be if I forgive my mother? Who will I be if I actually say my mom was part of the problem? And I don't mean, of course, that she in any way was at fault for her death, but she contributed to the chaos, right, in the family. Again, I'm not saying she caused the chaos, but so really just looking at things with clear eyes. And that takes courage. And now what I said earlier about innocence, a willingness to practice the act of seeing innocence, not only in others, but ourselves. I think that innocence is a pathway to forgiveness, right? When you're able to talk about innocence and see innocence and embrace innocence. And I'm not saying that people still didn't do something. I'm not saying you have to have lunch with them, right? But I am saying that everyone is, if we want to believe soul contracts, we want to believe that we're souls coming down to earth, we're all here for some purpose. And when I'm working with people and they have a teenage son, an ex-wife or something, and I go, well, you don't know what their life's about. You don't know why they're here. Maybe they're here to live that life that they're living now that you're so upset with. I don't know that. And you don't either. And they may not know. But, if we believe that we're here for something larger, if we believe in soul contracts, if we believe that we're souls, if we believe that we have a soul's purpose, then hopefully that'll give us a little courage to actually live it.
Yeah. One really important distinction for me I received not long ago, within the last 2 years, was that we don't have souls, that we are souls.
Yes.
We have bodies. We have
Yes.
thoughts. We have a mind.
Yes.
We aren't the mind. We aren't the body.
Yes.
In fact, our soul isn't inside of our body. Our soul is bigger than our body. Our soul
Yes.
is encompassing our body. Our body's inside our soul.
Yes.
And I just love that.
Yes. I do too. And it really is a shift from being attached to the external physical world and actually surrendering to something larger than us.
Mm-hmm.
So that takes a willingness. And because everything in this 3D world feels hard and real, and your husband did leave you, and your child did call you a horrible name, and you did flunk a class, those things feel so real. And in order for us to, again, live that soul life that is, again, bigger than our body, I agree, we must be able to transcend that, right? We must be able to transcend and see beyond the physical world. And that is difficult for many people, right? That's a shift.
Yeah.
And who am I then? Changing our identity, changing what we believe. Are you willing to be wrong about everything? I say, in order to find the right life for you, are you willing to be wrong about everything? If you're not willing to be wrong about even what you believe, if you're not willing to be wrong about what you see, if you're not willing to be wrong about what you think, then you're putting a lock on that and going to have a difficult time seeping out the truth of who you really are and seeing your innocence and forgiving.
Yeah, there's two sides to this coin. And this is a struggle I have. One side of the coin is not wanting to be wrong.
That's our humanness, right? Our human, we can call it the ego, what I call the wheel of fear. But you at your soul, you at the soul, as the soul, you at me as the soul, we could care less about being right.
Yeah.
Right? So when we want to be right, we know just because we want to be right, literally, because we want that, we know that is from our, again, what we want to call the ego, what I call the wheel of fear. We can call it monkey mind, whatever phrase that you use in your, in the way that you see the world. You automatically know that you're trapped in this human reality, right? Because the minute you want to be right, you're trapped.
A friend of mine who's quite psychic, and he's not public about it really, but he mentioned a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, he was just referring to the Earth as a prison planet. No. I didn't want to get into it with him. Right. I just let him have that one, but it certainly doesn't serve me. Like, the miracles are everywhere. Every moment is a miracle. I could not have one more breath without God. And so I see miracles happening, things that, again, going back to that definition of a miracle not being impossible, becoming possible, like the odds of some of these things that have happened in recent months are probably 1 in trillions. They're undeniably unusual, extraordinary, like almost outside the laws of physics, sort of wild sort of coincidences. But that's how the universe is supposed to work for us. Synchronicity is kind of the foundation, the scaffolding of bringing together all the beautiful souls that are in our soul family that have agreed to take the supporting actor roles in our movie. And
That's
they
right.
need to show up in some fashion.
That's
and
right.
When it's a synchronicity, then it's like, oh, hello, here's God at work again.
That's right.
I almost forgot for a moment that this is
right.
all
And
powered by
we're the supporting
God.
players in other people's lives, right?
Yeah.
We're the supporting players in other people's lives.
Yeah.
So, right. So I agree with you. It's just like that, life is a miracle. And what was it? Einstein says, you either live as if everything's a miracle or everything isn't, right?
Yeah.
And I choose miracle because, one, that's way more fun, and it's way more awe-inspiring, and it's more heart-opening and mind-opening and expansive than the opposite.
Yeah. Well, there's an extra kind of corollary to that. And you could live your life like nothing is random, or that everything is random.
Yes.
Because truly, like when you go behind the illusion of the matrix that we're living in, nothing is random, not even a random number generator. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about how you can actually influence a random number generator, slightly, but statistically significant variations just by thoughts. It's so powerful. It's like when you crack this open, you see one glitch in the matrix, and that opens the door for many more, and for then all the miracles to come. into your vision, because I learned this from Judaism, is that everything is a blessing. So kind of a corollary to this idea of miracles and how when you remove the illusionary veil, everything is. So everything is a blessing. It's just whether the blessing has been revealed or not. So if you want more of your traditional kind of blessings that you think of as blessings, you could pray for more revealed blessings, and then you get more precision around what you like. Oh, I just won the lottery. Well, that actually is a blessing of a different kind, because you end up, getting in a worse condition. Typically, I've read some of these stories of people who have won the lottery and how that was like the worst thing for them at the time. But in retrospect, when you connect all the dots afterwards, can't do it beforehand, but after you connect all the dots and see like, oh, wow, that really did serve me.
Absolutely. I mean, I just think of my parents, right? That served me. That propelled me in a path of personal development, searching, when God didn't keep my mother alive and I was just planning to be a minister. In that moment, I put a line between me and God. I never got mad at him, right? But I remember the first thing I heard when the bullet stopped was, I'll never give you a lesson that you can't do, right? You're never going to get more than you can do, right? And I'm thinking in my head going, this is more than I can do. Okay, this is a little over the top. And so I ran in, prayed to God, please save my mother. Mm-hmm. And when she died, I really did put God on the other side of a line. Again, never got mad at him, knew he was doing his business, but I didn't want another lesson. And I actually felt on a cellular level, logically, I knew the truth, right? When that's the thing, logically, we know the truth sometimes, but on a visceral level, in our cells, we don't, our body doesn't know. And so I 100% believed that if I went back to God, somebody in my family would die, because I was so devoted to God when my mother died that I correlated that, as many people would. And of course, I was 14. So I truly, in my cells, again, logically, I knew it wasn't true. But in my cells, falling back into the arms of God was the last thing I could do if I was going to save and be that superhero for my family. And it wasn't until 20 years later, God never quit bugging me, right? God bugs you, right? God, hello. So God never quit bugging me.
And you hear God, or how does that?
I hear God. Yeah. Yes, I hear God. God talks to me and all the time, I'm going to say all the time, but definitely have a dialogue, right? Definitely have a relation. And I was, get away from me. I don't want you. And finally, after 20 years of nudging, I remember I was coming home and I was actually going back to church, but every time I heard the word God, I would change it to light or universe or the field or something. I couldn't say the word God yet. And that was 20 years. And I remember driving home from church. God was having, nudging me really hard. And I finally pulled, it was raining as well. And I pulled over on Mulholland Drive. It was pouring rain and me and God had it out. Like when they talk about wrestling with God, literally, I wrestled with God. I was in there 45 minutes, an hour, just having it out with God. And I finally, at the end of it, realized that I could no longer deny God. And that if it meant my whole family die, so be it. And again, I know logically, right? But viscerally, it felt real. And I think that's something that to support the folks listening right now, it's like there is a difference between intellectually knowing something and viscerally in your cells knowing it. And I was afraid actually to wake up the next morning because I was convinced somebody would be dead. The good news is nobody did die. But going through that wrestling with God and me rejoining and coming back to God was then what started propelling me faster on my path. Because now all the years the locusts have eaten, right, have come back to you, right? So everything, all those times that I was in the middle way of trying to find my way, it's like time collapsed. And once I was able to say yes to God again, I was able obviously to hear him clearer and able to take action quicker and able to take action because I was no longer afraid that somebody was going to die at the expense of my action.
Wow. So if all loss is an illusion, which is something I learned in studying Kabbalah, all loss is part of the illusion, then the fear of your loved ones dying because you've fallen back into God's arms. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are about this concept or this, well, I would say truth, but everybody has their own truth. So that loss is an illusion. So, what's your take on that?
I agree, because this is the thing, we're in human reality and loss feels very real in human reality.
Yeah.
And when we're looking through that lens, right, it's very real. And I do believe that our human experience is valuable. So I don't believe in shunning our human experience. I believe that we are in a human body for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that we have huge opportunities to open our heart, open our being into seeing innocence and forgiveness, which all again opens our hearts, which again pierces the illusion. And then we do see that there's no loss, right? So if I look back, once I was able to say yes to God, once I was able to forgive my father, my mother, and then myself, even though on a human plane, obviously my father murdering my mother and killing himself in front of me was horrific. We can all agree on that. Yet I also know that they are right here. They are right with me, that we are doing this together. Don't get me wrong. Like on the human plane, there's times I still get activated and still have moments of sadness, right? Still have moments of grief. 20, 30, 40 years later, you can be activated. Something happens in your life and it brings back that, memory. It brings back that cellular and you're right back there, not to that level, not to the intensity, but it reminds you. And I think all of that is, again, allowing us to become more masterful at forgiveness, more masterful at no loss, masterful at seeing through the illusion. It's a paradox, right? You actually have to get into your human reality in order to know it's an illusion, right? But you have to get into it. If you're on the surface, you're not going to necessarily get into it as fast, right? You're not going to necessarily know, you're not going to have that contrast, right? So I do believe that there's no such thing as loss after you have the awakening, after you wake up to that. But, to say that too soon to somebody that's in loss, of course, is on the human plane, right? There's the human experience. So, again, I want to honor the human experience, but I also know that where everybody's going, where I'm going, where you're going, where everybody's going, is to know the truth about forgiveness, about innocence, about loss, about the hem of the garment, about, the years the locusts have eaten, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we get to decide. We're so powerful. Mm-hmm. We are actually so powerful. God gave us free will, which is amazing. So we are so powerful. And the challenge is we use our power for things that are actually keeping us stuck in the world rather than transcending the world.
Yeah. It's tricky though to have that awareness of your awareness and to keep it.
It is
at all times.
It is.
Like you're in the game and you're out of the game at the same time. And you lose your focus for a second and boom, you're sucked into the game and you completely forget. Like you're in the movie theater and you forget that you're in a theater watching a movie and now you're in the movie.
Yes, but that only gives us I just went through a very difficult time on a human plane and I said to God, I go, oh God, I haven't felt this way for literally 30 years. I said, is this for me to remember how my clients feel? Is this to remind me how much of the world feels? Because I don't feel that necessarily very often. Feeling that on the human plane allowed me to even expand my level of compassion, expand my level of forgiveness, expand my heart. I always tell my clients, the difference between me and you is I know the ending, I know there's happily ever after. I know the ending's going to happen. I know it's going to be good, right? I've gone through so many dark nights that I know you're going to transcend this. I know the ending is good. Mm-hmm. You just don't know that because you just haven't done it enough. But once you go through it and see how you will transcend it and that you will be able to get the fodder from it to use for fertilizer for your present life and the future, then you're no longer afraid to feel the feelings of this thing called human reality, to feel the pain, the suffering, the frustration, the loneliness, et cetera, because that's doing something to the very essence of your being so that you can be more alive, more, I want to say usable, more available, more translucent, more alive. So
what did God answer when you asked, is this why I'm going through this terrible experience, worst one in 30 years? Was that the reason? Was there more to it than that or what?
I can say yes, a little bit, but it was something bigger than that. It was really for me to hone my purpose. We're always think of God as the rain and we're the stone, right? And we're always getting dripped on. Sometimes there's lots of stormy weather, but can you know the truth? Can you hang on to the center? So, as I'm hanging on to the center, with my fingernails, right? It became very clear to me that this was really just for me to reawaken, or not even reawaken, to go deeper into why I'm here, to alter, I don't want to say shift the work I do on the planet because that's not quite it, but to bring new colors to it and bring more higher vibration to it.
One thing my Kabbalah teacher, Eliyahu Jian, who I just interviewed again for the show, he told me is that this wave or this roller coaster that you go up, 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 where you're, everything is magic and it's just synchronicity and everything, and you're in the fulfillment. But then you got to go back up there. There's no desire.
That's right. You're in content.
Yeah.
You feel alive. You feel connected. Yes.
So you need to come back down to get into the desire again and reignite that. But now you're out of the fulfillment. It's like, I know I had a huge lesson a year ago, lost a lot of money, and it was very humbling and a huge lesson, and so many lessons that I could unpack from that. But it's ultimately a huge gift. Now, it didn't take me long to recognize that that was a gift from God and to adjust my filters around processing that. But it's not easy. And I had to kind of empty my vessel to get back into the desire so that I could build an even bigger, stronger vessel to receive even more light.
Yes. And, I think that's one of the hardest things, when you've reached the high. I mean, that's where I've been, exactly similar to you. It is humbling. It reminds us that we are all one, right? We're all one. We're all the same. I just keep reminding myself that the years the locusts have eaten will be given back onto you, right? That, my job is just to move through this and kind of, take my rake and gather up the leaves and be awake to what's happening, because it is a cycle. I tell my clients, they think that you have to forgive once, like, oh, there's only one bad thing that will happen, right? They don't know about the roller coaster. Just imagine your body and just imagine there's just a bunch of holes in it. Okay, just imagine that for a second. And when you first forgive, you fill up one hole. And that hole has been so vacant and so empty, it feels like, right? I can breathe again. And it feels like you filled up all the holes. But in reality, you didn't, And then you go through, I think of like my journey of, when I was the third suicide attempt. Of course, I wanted my mother there, right? And I had to forgive her again, right? And so I filled up another hole. And then when I got married, I remember just crying, just like, you're not here, right? And again, filling up another hole. And then when I got divorced and feeling angry that she wasn't there, right? So all these moments, it's like there's not one hole of forgiveness. I just imagine that there's a whole bunch. And as you grow and as you increase your awareness, as you increase your capacity to live in the moment, as you increase your heart capacity, holes are revealed, then you fill those and you will feel even more alive. So I have so many clients going, I can't believe I have to forgive again. It's like, no, that means you've grown. You actually can experience the hole. Like it's there. Like that's amazing, right? Because it wouldn't show up if you didn't have the capacity to heal it. So I always say, if you're having a new feeling, if you're having quote unquote, unforgiveness come up again, et cetera, that's just proof, positive, how much you've grown. So that now you can actually see at this level what needs to be cleared out, needs to be healed, what needs to be faced, what needs to be loved, what needs to be forgiven, et cetera.
Yeah.
So, I'm with you. The roller coaster, just like a roller coaster, sometimes you just have to hang on.
And another analogy that comes to mind is a Japanese term, kintsugi, which is the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery by mending the pieces together with gold, with lacquer and powdered gold. So it's making the vessel even more valuable because it's been broken.
I agree with that 100%, right? People would not trust me the way they do if I hadn't had my horrible day, right? In the next 20 years. And I wouldn't be able to speak in such a way that resonated if I didn't have my horrible 20 years. Yeah. And, people ask me, well, do you wish it would have been different? I go, of course, I would rather have my mother and father alive. Of course. If I was going to be a housewife in the Midwest and my parents were alive and I had 3 kids and fine, great, awesome. Right. But that wasn't what was in store for me. Not having that life was also painful. Not having that life, right? Not having 3 kids, not living in the Midwest, not, living 3 blocks from my mother. All that can be painful. We all have pain and joy, right? Coexisting. What thread are you going to hang on to? So yeah, I love that. I love the pots and the gold. That just always reminds me of the truth.
So something that nothing is random, as I said earlier, something that caught my visual interest in the corner of my eye when we were talking earlier in the conversation was a blue jay. And I can tell when these are signs, when these are messages, just like they pop. Right now I can see an ibis out the window, but that's not really a message right now. But blue jay is. Let me just read a few things from this book, Animal Speak by Ted Andrews, about the
Ah,
blue jay.
yes,
You know this book?
I
Yeah.
do.
And tell me what resonates for you. I'll just pick a small selection. For those to whom the jay comes as a totem, it can reflect lessons in using your own power properly. It can also reflect lessons in not allowing yourself to be placed in a position in which power is misused against you. I'm curious if anything resonates there for you on that.
Well, just the word power, right? We just talked about that a minute ago. It's like how powerful we are. We have so much power and we forget. So, yeah, it can be used in our favor. We can use it in our favor, or it can be used against us. I think both of those things are very true. But just again, when you said the word power, it's like, yeah, we forget how powerful we are. And I'm not talking about power on this human plane, even though that is true as well, but the power of spirit, the power of soul, the power of who we really are, the power of what we can see, and if we just choose to see it. So, yes. And the second part of like, oh, the power against you, which is, the last year, right? The dark night. That's again, the roller coaster, right? We're either believe we're at the effect of this world or we believe that we transcend this world. And that is that constant tightrope, right? And how much can we stay in the transcendence and yet fully interact in the world? Because I think that's the other thing. We think, oh, it's just easier if I just become a monk and live in the mountains, right? And don't interact. I just want to meditate all day. And again, some people are meant to do that, but most of us are not. Most of us are meant to, kind of go up to the top of the mountain and come back and share the good news, right? To share the expansion that we've experienced and to emit that through our own energy field. So, yeah. So I love that. And I did a vision quest. I was out in the woods for, 5 days by myself, with nothing, fasted, etc. Two significant things happened to me regarding animals. One was I had a blanket, on the blanket sitting, and I started folding up the blanket. And in the act of folding up the blanket, I crushed a caterpillar. And I was devastated, right? I'm like, oh, I'm in a vision quest. No, I don't want to kill it. So that's one thing that happened. And then the next thing that happened, I was next to a quartz field, literally quartz, quartz, quartz. And the person who was taking us on this vision quest, I was like, I want to camp here for the next 5 nights. He's like, Rhonda, there's a big quartz thing. He goes, I know. I go, I know. He goes, it's a lot of energy. I go, I know. I know that I'm supposed to be here. So I would meditate inside the quartz every day. And one day, a hummingbird came up to me and literally was like, and then left, right? So at the end of our vision quest, we met up again and met with our teacher. I told him like, oh my God, I killed a white caterpillar. And then this hummingbird came up to me and he goes, oh, when an animal dies in your presence, it is giving you its energy. It's giving you its life force. So what does a caterpillar mean? Well, it's rebirth. It's transcendence. It's, caterpillar goes into a butterfly. And he goes, you're going through metamorphosis. So the caterpillar gave you its energy. The hummingbird, I'm blank on right now, but the hummingbird, it was also a message, right? So I think about that just like when you said the blue jay, we're always getting messages.
Yeah.
If you want to be encouraged, if you want to be hopeful, take this as me and Stephan are talking, take this as a sign, take this as synchronicity, so you get to decide, is this a sign that's going to help me move me forward into where I want to go? Or is this a sign that I'm taking on the human plane that makes me stay stuck in this human world, right? Like we get to interpret everything, and we get to decide when you're at the level you are, what it is. But in the beginning, you get to decide what a message is. Choose a message of hope. Are you going to choose a message of transcendence? Are you going to choose a message like the caterpillar, like it's giving you its energy force and it's supporting you and it's wanting you to, it's right there with you transforming? Or are you going to say, I'm a bad person because I killed the caterpillar? Like we get to interpret everything. And that's how powerful we are. Going back to the blue jay, we get to interpret until we don't.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, amazing coincidence. I'll share that I completely forgot that happened until you were talking about the animals giving you its energy. So I tried to rescue and save an injured blue jay. This was a number of months ago. It was on the sidewalk. It looked like it was already dead, but I went up to it and its eyes were open. It was looking at me, and I asked its permission to pick it up if that's what it wanted. And I got like telepathically, I got the yes. So I carried it back to the house a couple doors away and showed my wife Orion and asked her to help care for it for a few minutes while I figure out where to take it and so forth. We call a local animal rescue, and they say, come on and bring him or her. I think it was a him. Yeah, it's a him. It feels like totally like I know it's a him. But anyways, he didn't make it. I'm 5 minutes on the road with this blue jay in the car with me, and then he's gone. This blue jay is with you. His soul is supporting you, and he's coming along for the ride. I just wanted to share that before I read a little additional passage from this Animal Speak book on the jay that I think really encapsulate what we were talking about. The jay has the ability to link the heavens and earth, to access each for greater power. The black and white markings found on its blue wings also reflect the same ability. The sky, blue, separates the heavens, white, and the earth, black. This is a totem that can move between both and tap the primal energies at either level. The jay is aware of this innate ability, and this is reflected in its blue crest, higher knowledge that can be used. The main problem will be in dabbling in both worlds rather than becoming a true master of both.
Yes, exactly what we talked about. Yes, 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 yes. And also, when you were talking about the blue jay taking it in your arms, I thought how wonderful it didn't die alone and cold on the sidewalk. You held it and it died in such a more beautiful, transcendent way. And I love the meaning of that totem that you said. That is the problem, 1 foot in and 1 foot out, right? 1 foot in this world and 1 foot in the other world. And again, I'm just going to leave it with that. I think it's just a beautiful and yes, yes, yes.
Awesome. Now there's something else I'm being nudged to share. Getting all these nudges here. You know the song Adia by Sarah McLachlan? Yeah. So she sings in that song all about innocence, and you've brought innocence up many times on this interview. So I would like to just share a little excerpt from the lyrics that I think will speak to you. And Adia, I thought that we could make it. I know I can't change the way you feel. I'll leave you with your misery, a friend who won't betray. I pull you from your tower. I take away your pain and show you all the beauty you possess. If you'd only let yourself believe that we are born innocent. Believe me, Adia, we are still innocent. It's easy. We all falter. Does it matter?
Yes, that in and of itself is what I believe. It's so amazing how shame and blame and judgment just falls off our shoulders when we can embrace innocence. Like literally the shame just falls off our shoulders. The blame just falls off our shoulders. The hump on our back, the baggage we're carrying just falls off our shoulders. Yet most people just hang on. Well, Rhonda, but you don't understand. I did this horrible thing. It's like, yeah, but you didn't do it. The real you didn't do it. The you that is the essence of who you really are did not do that. It was the you on this human plane that was trying to work things out that did it. Can you separate yourself? Can you see yourself, as you're saying, soul versus body? Can you see yourself from, spirit versus, human plane? Can you see the difference? And I love when you talked about the blue jay and the bridge, because that's how I see my work. I say I'm the bridge between human reality and spiritual truth, because there is in this moment for most of us not denying human reality, but there also is, we can incorporate, transcend, take on the spiritual truth so that human reality becomes a lot easier and a lot more graceful and a lot more synchronicity and a lot more miracle minded to live. So, we get a choice. We're so powerful. We're so powerful.
Mm-hmm. The power to create worlds is within us. That's from
yes.
Abraham, channeled by Esther Hicks. Yeah. Fear is something that feeds the lower energies. And there's a lot of material out there on Netflix and on the news, CNN, Crisis News Network, et cetera, that will feed that or stir that in us, stir that fear, which then these lower light will feed on. Stop feeding it your fear, your energy. And by the way, I learned from one of my mentors, Tina Zion, who's an amazing medical intuitive, psychic, and Reiki master, written a number of books on these topics. She was watching a Netflix show that was not very good. And there was one scene it was pretty dark, and she's like, why am I watching this? But then there was a scene where the protagonist is telling whatever the evil thing is that was in the show, and I don't even know what the show was. I have no more fear to feed you.
Yes, I have no more fear to feed you. Yet, most people, I love that. I love everything you're saying today. So it's so moving. And one of the things that I know to be true in my experience is most people don't even know it's fear, right? That's the first hurdle that I must get over with my students and clients, is that they must first admit that they have fear, but most people don't even see it as fear, right? They see it as, flaws in themselves. They see it as defects. They see it as, I'm the problem. I procrastinate. They don't see that as fear. They don't see procrastination as fear. They don't see overwhelm as fear. They don't see anxiety as fear, right? They don't see their perfectionism as fear. They just think of those as character flaws. And so when you can start seeing those things are activated and occur because there is fear, now we can get to the root and actually look at not only the, shift it, but also build a relationship with it. What I tell my students is fear loves you. Fear loves you. It's just trying to keep you safe. And because you have limited skills and limited tools, you only know how to do it certain ways. And so once you learn more skills and tools, once you can identify fear for what it is, instead of taking that shame, taking that procrastination, that perfectionism, that anxiety, that overwhelm, that I made the wrong decision, all those, unforgiveness, et cetera. Once you can start seeing through that lens of like, oh, that's all fear-based. And can kind of put it in a bucket over here instead of making each individual so powerful, right? Well, I procrastinate and I get overwhelmed and I have anxiety, right? No, it's just go put it in the bucket of fear.
Yeah.
And then you can start looking with clear eyes at, oh, fear's just trying to keep me safe. And I have the choice and have the power to decide to let fear have its way with me or not.
Yeah.
But most people are stuck at the level of their fear-based responses. I call them fear responses. The fear responses are stuck on the human plane of there's something wrong with me. And that's where the innocence, where we started this conversation, that's where the innocence comes in. So when you start seeing your innocence, you can start separating yourself from those, procrastination, perfectionism, anxiety, overwhelm, again, whatever you think are the quirks, whatever you think is wrong with you, whatever you think your problems are. Once you can start seeing your innocence, you can start seeing those things through a different lens, and then be able to put them in the bucket and transcend them.
When you talk about the human plane, I translate that into Kabbalistic teachings of the body consciousness versus the soul consciousness. You have both. And the soul consciousness is limitless and is full of mercy and unconditional love and is so beautiful and bright and everything. And the body consciousness is fear-based and reactive and full of ego and so forth. And you're gifted with all this beautiful baggage, all these personality quirks and things that really trigger people. And that's part of your soul correction for this lifetime. And next lifetime, you'll get a different set of challenges, gifts of personality defects. So if you think of your body consciousness as driving the bus when you cave into cravings for chocolate or whatever, it's like, do I really want my body consciousness to be driving this bus, or do I want my soul consciousness to be driving it? I always want my soul consciousness to be driving the bus. So it can be hard to resist the cravings. I just had some chocolate an hour ago, but I had a conversation with God about it beforehand. And I'm like, please, God, help me with this craving because it's really annoying.
Well, if it's really, really dark chocolate, it's actually good for you. Some people say it depends on your addiction.
No, it was not that kind of stuff.
Not for you, right? Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's just, it reminds us humble moment, right? That's just that's just on your knees moment. That's just a surrender moment. Mm-hmm. So all these moments again are just, we're being called.
They're all gifts.
We're being called to surrender. Right. They're just saying, Here's another time you can choose. Oh, wait, here's another time you can choose. Oh, wait, here's another time you can choose. Oh, wait, another time you can choose.
It's a
And,
massive
God's
choose your
spirit,
own adventure book.
yeah. And we're doing it every minute of every day, literally every minute of every day, every moment.
Yeah.
And we get to decide, again, going back to the Blue Jay, that's how powerful we are.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you call it soul consciousness, which of course, my theme is live the life your soul intended. That's my motto in my Fearless Living Institute, live the life your soul intended. So when you can surrender to that, as you say, even when you have that moment of wanting the chocolate from your, what you call the body consciousness and what I'd call the wheel of fear, that even too can be laughed at and enjoyed, even though you're going through that, the tunnel, the painful, like the eye of the needle, right? The tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'm with
Yeah,
you.
it's fun. It's so fun. One last thing I'll leave you with comment on for a minute, because I know we're at time here, but this came to me to bring up. It's a definition of fear from the book The Game of Life and How to Play It by Frances Scovel Shinn, published in the 1920s. Incredible. Like, she was so ahead of her time.
So ahead of her time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love reading books from the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s. One of my favorite books is Christian Larson, The Pathway of Roses, 1921.
Mm.
So beautiful. So yes, please.
Okay. So fear is inverse faith. Do you remember that from the book?
Yes, I do. And people talk about that, right? It's like, oh, you're just having faith in the wrong things, right? So you're always, the theory is that you're always having faith. You're always having faith. It's just, what do you have faith in? Do you have faith in fear? Yes. And I say that fear, as I say, every emotion has a job, and fear's job is to love you and keep you safe. And once you can see through the illusion and see that you can choose faith instead and choose the soul consciousness, then life changes. You see through a different lens. And once you see through a different lens, everything changes. Your whole life changes. Yeah. Everything that ever happened to you changes. Your whole stories change. Like the meaning of them, the point of them all change.
Yeah, you can even change
and that's
the
when
past.
You can look.
People say, well, you can't change the past, but you know what?
It literally changes the past. It literally changes the past.
You can heal your ancestors who lived hundreds of years prior to you by
That's
praying
right.
for them.
That's right.
I love that.
Well, not only that, I'll just say this, is that I absolutely believe 100% that as I heal, I am healing my legacy line.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I don't have the courage to do it myself, right? I don't have maybe I don't feel worthy, or I don't feel like I can do it, or maybe I feel unable to do it. I think of my nieces, I think of my nephews. I think of the future line. I think of the past line. And I say, I will do it for them. And that gives me courage. So I always say to people, if you can't do it for yourself, do it for your kids, do it for the future, do it for the past, clean up around you. Because as you're healing in this moment, you're literally healing the DNA of your entire line.
Mm-hmm. And your ripple effect is rippling across timelines and across universes in the multiverse.
I absolutely say yes and more yes.
Well, this has been so fun. So how do we work with you? How do we get coached by you and take your courses, read your books, and all that sort of stuff?
Thank you for asking. So go to fearlessliving.org. And, I have a gift if people want to go grab it. It's a course to transcend procrastination, start seeing yourself differently through a different lens. It's called Stretch, Risk, or Die. And if you find yourself not moving forward and kind of stuck in this human plane, go and grab it. It's fearlessliving.org/risk, RISK. Check it out. It's 3 15-minute videos. It's got a whole bunch of worksheets, and it's going to show you where you may be getting caught on this human plane.
Awesome. Well, you are such a bright light in the world. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your challenges. You're just being so vulnerable and open with us. You're just such a light.
Thank you so much, as are you. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Be fearless.
Yeah, and listener, I want you to do something that is outside your comfort zone this week. And if you can, email me and let me know what you did. My email address is me@stephanspencer.com. And just get out there and reveal light in the world and see what that does for you. Don't do it because of that, to get something in return, but do it to be the light, and you'll see amazing gifts in coming your way. We'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.